PodcastHero.com.
Welcome to the Daily Quote, the podcast designed to kickstart your day in a positive way. I'm your host, Andrew McGivern, and this episode is brought to you by the Great News Podcast, because good news should be heard. Link is in the show notes. Today's quote sounds wrong at first. It is designed to. It comes from Zig Ziglar, one of the most celebrated motivational speakers and authors of the 20th century. A man who dedicated his life to helping people close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And he deliberately flipped one of the oldest sayings in the English language on its head when he said, "Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you can learn to do it well." I'm sure you've heard the original. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like standards. And buried inside it, quiet and dangerous, is one of the most effective excuses for never starting anything. Because if it's only worth doing when you can do it well, then you have to be good before you begin. And nobody is good before they begin. So the thing stays undone. The business stays unstarted. The book stays unwritten. The conversation stays unhad. The new skill stays unpracticed. And the gap between where you are and where you want to be stays exactly the same, while you wait to be ready. Ziglar understood this trap better than almost anyone. The enemy of beginning isn't laziness. It's perfectionism. It's the internal voice that says not yet, that tells you to wait until the conditions are right, the skills are sharp, the plan is airtight. And because those conditions never quite arrive, not yet becomes never. His reframe is both simple and revolutionary. Of course the first attempt will be poor. Of course the early work will be rough. Of course the beginner's version of anything will be inferior to the expert's version. That's not a reason not to start. That's what starting is. Doing it poorly is the first step on the path to doing it well, and you cannot skip it. You can only go through it. The second half of the quote is where the whole thing comes alive. Until you can learn to do it well. Ziglar wasn't giving permission to stay mediocre. He was giving permission to begin and trusting that if something is worth doing, the doing of it, even poorly, will teach you what you need to know to do it better. Progress doesn't wait for perfection. It builds through imperfect repetition. The first episode of this podcast was poor by any objective measure. The audio wasn't perfect. Even though I know a lot about audio, I used too many plugins, tried to make it sound even better, and I made it sound worse. The delivery was a little rough. I had never done a solo podcast before. I'd always been either co-hosting or doing roundtable discussions. The structure was still finding itself. If I had waited until I could do it perfectly, I'd have never started at all. Every episode since has been built on top of that imperfect first one. Not because I planned it that way, but because Zig Ziglar is right. Doing it poorly, consistently, is how you eventually get to doing it well. So here's the question. What are you waiting to be good at before you'll allow yourself to begin? Because if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Right now, today, with the skills you currently have and the knowledge you don't yet possess. Start. Do it badly and learn. Then do it less badly and repeat. Over and over again. That's not a shortcut around the work. That's exactly how the work gets done. That's going to do it for today. I'm Andrew McGivern, signing off for now. But I'll be back tomorrow. Same pod time, same pod station, with another Daily Quote.